whenever you saw the scope of what we were about to embark on, it was sobering. I was excited, but it was like, okay, now it's time to go to work. I was, I guess, 6 or 7. It was when Desert Storm kicked off. My dad, who I thought was the toughest guy on the planet, was just like, see, those are United States Marines, and they're the toughest men on the planet. And I was like, from that point, it's like, if my dad thinks those are the toughest men on the planet, I'm gonna be one. There wasn't ever any question. Now, I did want to play for the Dallas Cowboys, but I always was like, I'll do that after, I was with 1-8 Charlie Company during the Battle of Fallujah. I was a Lance Corporal, and I was a saw gunner at the time. You don't realize how much, it's miserable when you're sitting there and doing hot barrel changes or doing immediate remedial action until your fingers bleed. But the first time that your weapon jams in a fight and all of a sudden you're back, I can remember thinking doing immediate action and re-engaging and thinking okay, that's why we do this all the time, because I didn't think about it. I didn't think about it until it was done. It had to get to a point where you had implicit trust in every member of the squad that they knew their job without a shadow of a doubt. There was no question of what are they, you knew what they were doing because we trained so hard together. Back on Lejeune, during the workup, we knew we were going to Iraq, but nobody knew. How could you, go into Fallujah? We just knew we were getting ready for Iraq, and that was that. It didn't really sink in until we saw the terrain model. And I wish I had a picture of, that terrain model, but massive. You think of a table like this, you think terrain model, and that would be a large one. This was the size of this room. I remember, you're sitting there trying to process, okay, this is gonna be a fight. And then when he started laying it out, it's okay, is this really what you're saying? And I think a lot of Marines were like that because we couldn't believe, because we felt so handcuffed for so long, that they were taking the freaking gloves off, and gonna let us really go bang it out. Anybody that looked at that terrain model and heard that briefing was scared. They talked about expecting the battle to last 6 months and hoping we would get relieved, and the percentages of casualties being, ridiculously high. It's of course, you're gonna have a little bit of fear there. And fear is fine. But cowardice is not. When you realize it's okay, it's coming, it wasn't that jacked up, rowdy amp, hell yeah, we're gonna go get some. It became very, very serious. I can remember Gunnyberry, coming by, and every saw gunner take 2 extra drums. And it's okay. And then Gunny Colley came back around, come get another drum if you can carry more ammo, and then extra grenades. And it's all right. And it's kind of surreal. You never imagine, especially when you've been in this kinder, gentler war, when all of a sudden you see fast movers make a run on the city. It's man, this is about to go down. To understand that fight was necessary. I'm not going to get into the politics of whether the war was, whatever, but that city was infested with people that wanted nothing more than to kill Americans. They were proud about it. you start seeing on newspapers like Fallujah's a graveyard for Americans. No American will ever walk out alive. Like, and it set the tone knowing they were pros. Really, like when we offloaded, you know, we were taking fire, but it wasn't like heavy fire, which makes sense. Like why would they give up? That's the difference in like when you're fighting professionals. If there was a bunch of amateurs, they'd have been hammering the tracks all the way in, which have heavy guns on them. So they let us offload and get in place before they opened up. You don't realize how good a command you have until you have a few. And while I had some great company commanders later, some great staff NCOs later, nothing like that group all together, the way they work together. And so when you look at Charlie Company as a whole, you know, the effect that we had taking as few casualties as we did, it wasn't like we weren't in just as heavy fighting as Bravo. It was our company, you know, our CO fought back against our BC as far as advancing too quickly. You know, we were already in basically a 360-degree fight. We're not going to keep pushing to continue to allow, you know, enemy getting behind us when the BC just, you know. So he pushed back. All the blood and guts stuff, whatever, like I'll keep that to myself and between me and my brothers that were there. But remember funny moments? One of my buddies, Ryan North, he's like, y'all want the good news or the bad news? And of course we're like, give us the bad news first. And he's like, well, we're packed in here, going into a heavily fortified city that for 6 months we've invited people into to fortify defenses. There's thousands of them there waiting to kill us, and a lot of us are not gonna make it. It's like, what the fuck is the good news? And he's like, I just saved 15% on my car insurance by switching to Geico. And it was like, all right, shared suffering is what really welds people together. I mean, finding ways to keep one another going in tough times. Whenever the tanks and the tracks couldn't keep up with our advance, to continue to resupply us with water, and you're out, and your friend's out, and y'all are both like, when he gives you like his last drop, or, you know, splits what he has, like that's generosity. I think the most impactful now, like reflecting on, is like how quickly you see both ends of the spectrum of like the human condition. Like, you know, you don't know hate until you see someone shoot one of your friends, but you don't know love until you see a friend, you know, protecting another, sacrificing himself. When I got out, I tried to stay close to the job. Like you're not ever gonna be in the infantry again, but okay, how can I continue to be a warrior? Because that's what it's about. It's like, that's your identity, or it was for me. You get home and all of a sudden, like, you don't relate to the kids you went to high school with. It's harder to relate to your own family. And then the family that you've known is a million miles away. So when you lose your identity, you lose your mission at the same time, and your family. Like, yes, it's tough for dudes getting out. That doesn't need to be the story of like who you can be. Go tell a Marine, like, you know what they can do, and like give them a purpose and see what the hell happens. There have been times where no matter how successful you are in a lot of different ways, felt like, you know, less than because I wasn't still that guy. It's okay to feel that way. It's just not okay to let it dictate how you continue your attack in life, right? There's been some really hard times. Like what I know I struggled with was survivor's guilt. And to see some of the greatest men, you know, I'd ever known die, and like, I get to keep on. Like, that was hard for me. It was 9 or 10 years before I was able to finally reach out, like through a letter to my best friend's mom, because he was so much better of a person, you know, and those things affected me over the years, and she responded in an amazing way. And those things that affected me over the years, but I'd say the positive has affected me that much more. What I want to remember is, you know, it was by and large part 18, 19, 20-year-old kids that we're as prepared as we could be. What got us through such a grisly battle was the grit and determination and pride of knowing that, like, that we were the ones called on to do it for a reason. I don't know a real Marine that wouldn't sacrifice everything he had to extend the legend of the Marine Corps another 200 years, you know? So like, getting to be a part of that, and like, maybe it makes you feel better about some of the guys, because it's like, you know, forever they went out being a part of something that big.